We are going to do the first part of 2.2. And we're talking, I'm recording right now, so if we could be quiet, so, you know, when your parents listen to this, they don't hear your voice, that would be great. All right, 2.2. 2.2, we're going to analyze conditional statements, okay? A conditional statement has two parts. It has a hypothesis and it has a conclusion. When the statement is written in the if-then form, the if part contains the hypothesis and the then part contains the conclusion. The converse of a conditional statement, you take the hypothesis and conclusion and you switch them. Okay? A statement can be altered by negation, that is by writing the negative of the statement, and we call that the inverse. Okay, is the negation. And the contrapositive is when you take the negative and you switch it. Switch the hypothesis and conclusion. And I've got like a million examples for you. So that's what we're going to look at right now. Okay. So I know part of it is my crazy handwriting, and part of it I typed. So be happy that I'm not writing this. Okay, first, we're going to rewrite the conditional statement in an if-then format. Then we're going to write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive. An even number greater than 2 is not prime. So we write, if it is an even number greater than 2, then it's not prime. Do you guys see that I circled right here in red the hypothesis, and the rest is the conclusion? Now the inverse, which is the second statement, is I'm just making it negative. So if it is not an even number greater than 2, then it is prime. See how I either put a not in or take a not out? Yes?
So the first is if it is an even number greater than 2, then it is not prime.
Right. And then we make it negative. So if it is not an even number greater than 2, then it is prime. Okay. Now the converse. I go back to my original if-then statement. And I take the hypothesis and conclusion and I switch them. So it becomes, if it is not prime, then it is an even number greater than 2. Now the contrapositive is you take the converse and you just make it negative. If it is prime, then it is not an even number greater than 2.
Which one are you just reading?
I was just reading the contrapositive. Do you want me to reread these? Explain again?
Yeah.
Okay. So first it's an if-then statement. Remember, the if is the hypothesis, the then is the conclusion. Are we okay about that part?
Yes.
Okay. So if it is an even number greater than 2, then it is not prime. So now I'm going to make it negative. This is the inverse. What does inverse mean? Inverse means negative. What does inverse mean?
Negative.
What does inverse mean?
Negative.
Okay. If it is not an even number greater than 2, then it is prime. That's the inverse. Yes, Abby. Yeah, but we got to make sure we get it. Okay, so the converse is you take the main thing and you switch the hypothesis and conclusion. So it becomes, if it is not prime, then it is an even number greater than 2. All I did is switch the hypothesis and conclusion.
So if it's not prime, it's what?
Then the even number greater than 2. And then the contrapositive is I make it negative. So if it is not prime, then it is not an even number greater than 2. Are we ready for the second one? I'm going to do one more example, and I'm going to have you try it on your own. Okay. Oops, but I want to cover this part up. Okay, don't look there. All right. If an angle has a measure of 90 degrees, then it is a right angle. That's just the if-then statement. So now I'm going to make it negative. If an angle does not have a measure of 90, then it is not a right angle. Who remembers what converse means? Anybody? What did I do? I switched the hypothesis and conclusion. So I make it, if it is a right angle, then the measure is 90 degrees. Who remembers what contrapositive is? It's switched and then I make it negative. So if it is not a right angle, then an angle does not have a measure of 90 degrees. Okay, now you guys are going to have to try C on your own. I will dry the dishes if you wash the dishes. So you're going to have to make that into an if-then statement. I will dry the dishes if you wash the dishes. Can you make that into an if-then statement? Then for the inverse, I want you to make it negative. The converse, I want you to go back to the original if-then statement and switch the hypothesis and conclusion. And then the contrapositive is making the converse negative.